There is, for some reason, a lack of transparency in academia sometimes. You just, for some reason, can't get even the most basic information that you need. And it's the most frustrating thing because you're undertaking the most difficult thing and then you can't get even the most basic information. It's so frustrating. We would sometimes refer to that as academic hazing. And this drives me crazy, but it's this feeling of, well, I had to go through it this way, so you're going to have to go through it the same way I did.
What up, everyone? Today we are talking about the dark truths of academic research, what we've learned from spending all of these hours helping you guys out there. I'm your guy, Dr. E, and I'm joined here once again with one of our trusty coaches, Dr. Amy Murdoch, here to help you do what we do at GC, which is to simplify, demystify, and take all the anxiety out of academia. Amy, you ready to reveal some of these deeper darkers?
I am so ready, Dr. E.
Deeper, darker truth of academic research. Number one, I hate to break people's hearts. I don't want to hurt your feelings out there. I hurt a feeling or two, but I'm going to tell you the truth. The university, it's not always right. I'll be honest with you. They're not always right. Let me, before you freak out and everybody loses their mind, let me just explain what I mean by this, okay? Look, despite all of the systems that they make available to you, the templates, the guidances, the instructions, the experience, the expertise that they rely on, despite all of these things that all sound super compelling and super convincing, despite all of that, the fact of the matter is that research is variable. And it changes from university to university, from state to state, from country to country. Sometimes it might even change from department to department. What this means is that your chair or your supervisor or your committee members know what they know. And the likelihood is that won't always be the same thing in every single case. And ultimately, they're human beings. They're fallible. They're imperfect. And what this means ultimately for your sakes is that you can't put them up on a pedestal. Right? We can't just assume that everything that they say is gospel, or everything they say is always going to be true, or everything they say is the only possible option. There are ways of doing this outside of what they're telling you. Remember that the supervisors, chairs, committee members, etc., are there as guides, not as gods. So take their advice, certainly, but you want to take a little ownership of your work too. I mean, am I right here, Amy, or am I right? Am I missing something?
Oh my God. No, I could not agree with you more. And I absolutely love your little phrase, guides, not gods. That's beautiful. Yes, I could not agree more. There is nothing passive about this process. So you absolutely have to go after the information and not wait for it to come to you. They're very busy people. They're spread thin a lot of the time. There should be information. You just have to go after it. On the website, there will be templates. You want as many guidelines and as much structure as you can possibly get because everything else is going to be so fluid and there's going to be so many unknowns. So you want to know as much as you can, know the expectations. You know, I've asked people before, well, what's your university's formatting style? And they're like, oh, I don't know. I'm like, yeah, you need to know because at some point you're going to have to make all of these corrections. So anyway, yes, go after the information. Don't wait for it to come to you. I hate this word, but proactive. Yeah, be proactive. For me, going through my program, I relied very heavily on my cohorts for information in terms of asking for the templates, deadlines, expectations, what did you do? And then just like example dissertations, like, are you willing to send me your dissertation? Like I actually did that. And you make friends with people and they will. Man, I don't think I could have gotten through it without my cohort. So a bit of advice, like if you can, make a buddy, make a friend. If not possible, then yeah, you're going to have to be extra resourceful.
But that's the point right there, right? So this is the thing that always gets me, is that you are there for research. We're studying, well, whatever the level of the degree is that we're looking at, master's, PhD, maybe even bachelor's degree, but research project. Whatever level of research you're doing, you are there for research. So be resourceful. It's not like it should be outside the bounds of what you're trying to achieve anyway. It's just that you didn't think you'd have to do that with respect to your own institution or your own university, but you do. And like I said, today's for deeper, darker truths. And I get that that might not be comfortable for you, but that just is what it is. I mean, the truth is out there. The information, the truth is out there. I feel like I'm Mulder right now. All right, Scully, listen, the truth is out there, okay? And I feel like it should be a I want to believe poster behind me and like trust nobody. But look, seriously, jokes aside, in the age of like Google AI and YouTube, you almost can't not find the information you're looking for. I mean, you're doing it right now, right? If you're watching us, if you're joining us, first of all, thank you for watching, appreciate it. Thank you for being here. But still, if you're watching us, you're doing the research you're supposed to be doing right now. So I get it. It's not idyllic. It's not as beautiful as you thought it might be, but the information is out there, right, Amy?
Nerd. No, I'm kidding. I love X-Files, and for you to refer to me as Scully is the ultimate compliment. Yes, the information is out there. However, and this is a topic that I hope we explore in another podcast because I could talk about this all day. There is a thing, and I have opinions about this, for some reason, a lack of transparency in academia sometimes. And that is, you just, for some reason, can't get even the most basic information that you need. I know a lot of people can relate to what I just said. And it's the most frustrating thing because you're undertaking the most difficult thing, of your life, and then you can't get even the most basic information. It's so frustrating. So we would sometimes refer to that as academic hazing. And it is in a sense, and this drives me crazy, but it's this, I don't know, it's this feeling of, well, I had to go through it this way, so you're going to have to go through it the same way I did, which again goes back to the point of you're going to have to be your biggest advocate in this and just go after the knowledge.
Bars. And that's exactly why we are here. This is what we do. We're just demystifying, simplifying, and taking that anxiety away and getting rid of all that weirdo academic hazing stuff. I'm with you 1000%. So, sounds like what we're saying is that a little self-reliance is one of the more powerful tools that we're going to have in order to help us through that process, right? I mean, that sounds like, roughly speaking, what we're saying. But okay, but here goes another deeper, darker. All right, there's another dark truth of academic research. Breathe, compose yourselves, because this one might hurt a little bit. But that fear of failure you have, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. You're kind of doing this to yourself. I mean, again, don't panic, don't scream, don't yell at me. I'm just here to tell you the truth. This is just what it is. And if we're being really, really honest with ourselves, sometimes the truth is it feels like it's easier to quit than to try. Sometimes you'd prefer to give up than to actually put the effort in and make the progress that you want to make. And we all know what this is, right? We've all been through this at some point or another. It's the whole, what if I'm not doing the right thing? What if I can't do this? What if I'm not good enough? What if I'm limited in my abilities and I just haven't realized it and I'm about to find out in the worst possible way? And before you know it, that fear of failure becomes the permanent obstacle to you achieving whatever it is that you're supposed to be achieving. And failing to get past that means that you can't get through this. And then before you know it, you're stuck or you're sinking. And don't look at me like that, Amy. I know you've been through this too. So, what did you do? I mean, what do we do about this? What did you do about this?
Oh my God, please. Yes. Failure? Yeah. I mean, here's a little secret. We're all afraid. We're all muddling through. We're all figuring it out as we go. I'm afraid right now. This is something like if you watch these TED Talks or whatever about super successful people, they will talk about the importance of failure. They will talk about the importance of taking these calculated risks, right? And because that's really what that means. You're doing something you've never done before. You're venturing into uncharted territories. It's scary. The most important thing is just that you keep moving forward, even in your darkest hour of feeling like just unsure about things and just in your feelings about it. It's just that you keep moving forward.
I'm with you. 1000%. I wholeheartedly agree with you. And look, we've said this before. I don't want to, repeat stuff that we've already said because let's face it, you guys should be going through these podcasts and like clicking around and being resourceful and doing your research. But that's another thing. But we've said it before. The fact is that look, if you were to leave your work and go for a walk, it's not as though you leave the thoughts that come with it, right? So take the thoughts with you and think about the work that you need to think about. Just stop staring at it. Like if staring up until now hasn't got you the progress that you want, and if you've been sat in the same place, not making the developments that you want to make, go for a walk, change the environment, change the circumstances, and take your thoughts with you. As I say, it's not as though you're going to leave them behind and forget everything that you were supposed to be thinking because you just spotted a squirrel. Like, give yourself some credit. You know what I mean? Like, you can maintain two thoughts at the same time. You'll be fine. The point is that the trap usually is that we ask ourselves these kind of weird conceptual moral questions as opposed to the practical question, which is to say that you ask yourself things like, what do I do now? Or what am I supposed to be doing? These are open-ended, almost existential, broad, really massive questions, as opposed to the really simple, straightforward, practical question, which would be something like, what's required in order for me to complete this point? What's functionally required in order for me to complete this paragraph or this page and then eventually this project? It's just these practical steps. I mean, it's about getting started in that vein. Am I right?
Yes. And I love the way that you put that. I always think like whenever you go on vacation or you take a trip, you go outside, you're stepping away from your computer, even for a short period of time, you come back with even a slightly different perspective, a slightly different view on what you're doing. It's helpful. And the point is you're taking a break, but you're taking an action. And there's so much psychology about the dissertation process. There's so much that you're going to have to conquer in terms of the emotional part of it, in terms of getting over your fears, in terms of self-doubt, the imposter syndrome, all of that stuff. So small steps. What I tell people is that if you're feeling overwhelmed, and it is overwhelming, right, is to think about what's the thing I feel like doing right now? What's the easiest thing I can do right now? Do that section, do that paragraph, write that email. And if you can't, if you're just is too blocked, then yeah, go outside and take a walk. I think that's a beautiful suggestion because it does something for you psychologically. And I think it's important to have a self-awareness about where you are in your head about your progress. So fresh air, I mean, it's amazing. And it just makes you feel better.
No, 1000%. I completely agree with you. I'm on the same page. You go for a walk, go do something else, change the environment, change the situation that you find yourself in, change the circumstances and change the stimuli. I mean, it's just this weird thing to think that because your body is in one place that your brain is somehow separate from that. You're thinking this, so it doesn't really matter where you're physically sitting. I mean, the two things are connected. I don't know what to tell you. So what your stimulation you're giving yourself is going to make a difference to the information that comes out the other side. So I wholeheartedly agree with you. Change the stimulation, change the environment, change the circumstances, but keep working on what you're working on, man. I don't see what the problem is. So what we're saying is, or what it sounds like we're saying, is that you can kind of structure your way in small steps towards into construction, into composition, and then cumulatively into completion, one little practical step at a time. But you know why this is true? Let me tell you why this is true. Let me take a deep breath in, pause for a second. We prepare ourselves for another darker truth. Let me hit you with deeper, darker number 3 here. Here's what it is. There is no way around the hard work. Like, I hate to break it to you again, but there are no shortcuts to this game. I know some people sell you things on shortcuts. I know people suggest that there are other ways around, and people suggest that their experience means they found quicker ways to get from point A to point B. They don't exist. There are no real shortcuts out here. There's no way getting around the hard work. And more importantly, that's primarily because this process, it's not going to go as you planned. The fact of the matter is that as you go through it, you are going to bump into problems. That's going to happen whether you like it or not. You're going to bump into an issue with your data collection, for example. Maybe you're not going to collect all the data that you were hoping to, or something's going to go wrong with your data analysis and the results weren't what you were thinking they might be, or your literature review search didn't turn up the number of papers that you were hoping you were going to find, and now you have to search for these things in expanded terms or looking into other countries or other regions or whatever else. But the fact of the matter is that if you're doing this properly, it's not going to go as you plan, because you should be discovering something new as you make your way through it. You should be trying to push the envelope and making an original contribution. And if that's the case, it means venturing into areas that you haven't seen before or trying things that you weren't entirely sure of in the first place, which means that you are going to bump into mistakes, errors, challenges, and difficulties. You can't get around that. The fact is that you're going to have to do the work that you need to do in order for you to be able to get over those challenges and develop the skills necessary to that end. Whether those skills are like writing skills or academic searching skills. I mean, there's this misperception that if you weren't built to be an academic, whatever that means, or if you weren't in the right mold for an academic, whatever that means, then maybe you can't make it. And let's be honest again, even if there is such a thing as being in the mold of an academic, like being an academic to start off with, even if that did exist, which I don't think it does, but even if it did exist, like it or not, you weren't. Maybe you weren't in the mold of an academic, but you are trying to become one now. You're in the gym right now. You're training for this right now. So every time you write something, every time you develop a chapter, every time you develop an analysis, every time you practice reading or critical analysis of a source that you've just identified, this is you training. This is you getting into the process. So for those of you guys out there that are just kind of like sat, stuck, confused, lost in your what ifs and your maybes. I mean, it's almost like you went all the way over to the gym, you made yourself there, you got yourself dressed, and you just sat down in front of the treadmill talking about, I don't know, what if this doesn't work out the way I thought it was going to? I mean, I don't think it will. Now go for a run. Like, I don't know what to tell you. Do the thing. Look, I'm gonna say this one little story before I bring you in here, Amy, but I don't know if you know about the laconic phrase. You ever heard of a laconic phrase? Is that something as a phrase you ever heard of? Let me explain. A laconic phrase, right? It means a terse, usually offensive, or you could usually be kind of short phrase intended to kind of annoy the person you're talking to. It's partly the reason why I like him so much. But the point is, it's a little story from history, right? Which is to say that, look, the Spartan king received a letter from King Philip II of Macedonia today, but King Philip II of Macedon, he sends the Spartan king a letter, right? And in his letter, what he says to him is that if you do not submit and if you do not give up, I will send my armies to you and we'll raise your city to the ground. We're going to enslave your women. We're going to kill all your younger men. We're going to kill all the older soldiers, so on and so forth. We'll destroy everything. It's in your best interest because if you don't give in to us, all of these things are going to happen. You want to know what the Spartan reply was? If. Just if. You got to come here and do it. Don't what if me. You got to come here and make that happen. And the same thing applies to all of you guys out there who are worried about what if I'm not good enough, or what if I can't make it, or what if there's a challenge, or what if this is difficult. You got to do it. Like, you have to put your foot down and try. Push to see where you can get and see how much reality there is in that what if. You'd be surprised. You've got more skills than you give yourself credit for. I mean, good things come to those who work hard. Am I right, Amy, or am I right?
Yes, this is hard. This is really hard. It's hard for everyone. And if it's not, they're trying to sell you something. To borrow a line from one of my favorite movies, Princess Bride. I was a teacher for 14 years. I taught an amazing charter school called KIPP, and their motto, which I love, is effort creates ability. So what that means is, and this is what we taught our kids, is that it doesn't matter what you're born with, whatever skill sets. We all have our strengths and weaknesses, everybody, every single person, So it's having an awareness of what your skill sets are and working around it. So hard work will ultimately get you to where you need to be. It will, but it's going to take time. So I have a lot of clients who maybe they don't feel so confident about their writing skill or whatever, but they know that it's going to take them a little bit longer. So they plan for that. So that's absolutely key. And I really want to hear your thoughts on how important time management is for this process.
I mean, look, I'm with you. On every one of the points you've made, I'm with you 1,000%. The idea is to invest the time in yourself. And I think one of the important things with time management is allowing yourself a margin of error, basically, in terms of how much time you think it's going to take for you to finish whatever it is that you're trying to finish, right? So if you're working on your project, you're working on a chapter, you're working on a paragraph, a page, or a sentence, whatever it might happen to be that you're working on, and you assume or you believe that it should take you an hour to finish it, give yourself an hour and a half. If you think it's going to take you 10 minutes to get through it, give yourself 30. You know what I mean? Just build in a margin of error just in order to make up for that time that you're going to need as you make your way through the learning curve. I mean, this is not supposed to be something you just intuitively know how to do. It's supposed to be something that takes a little bit of time. So you just keep putting one foot in front of the other. I've said this before. I'll say it again. I'm going to keep saying this. It's endurance, not patience, that's the virtue. And practice really does make perfect. Really does. So you get better at whatever you do repeatedly, which means if you invest in the work of getting better at writing, for example, and the work will invest in you. All right, that was corny. I'm never going to say that kind of stuff again. But let me rephrase that into philosophical terms that I think make more sense for me and my peoples over here, which is that, look.
Oh, yeah, please do.
There you go. In Heideggerian terms, the argument is that it's not what you do with it, but what it does to you, which means you got to give it time to do something to you. You have to give yourself the space and the time to allow the work to alter you as much as you have to allow yourself the time to alter it. There's kind of an engagement with the work here, and you're supposed to be getting better over the time. You're supposed to be getting stronger, more effective, closer to whatever it was that you thought an academic mold was supposed to be in the first place. It's about planned excellence, building your way towards that stage. Planned excellence, Amy.
Planned excellence, indeed. You talk about mold. Wait, first of all, what was that name? I'm sorry, I'm not a
Heidegger.
Philosopher. Oh, okay, yeah. Okay, gotcha. I know him. I know Heidegger. Yeah, it is knowing yourself and knowing your limits. And yeah, it might mean that you have to work a little bit harder. It might mean that it takes you a little more time, but that's totally fine. I mean, you talk about a mold, there really is no such thing. I mean, whatever image you have at the onset, I think when I'm remembering back in my process, I think I had a certain image of who a PhD was. Well, let me tell you, folks, this is what PhD actually looks like. There's no mold. There's no one person who is just the perfect academic. It is what you make it. My favorite clients are people who identify themselves as being neurodivergent, and they know themselves. They're amazing people. They always astound me because they have all these extra things that they have to deal with, but they know it and they deal with it, and they know it takes them more time. It might take a lot more time, and it's frustrating and it's painful, but you say this word endurance. I love that word. I love this word persistence. They persist, but yeah, it takes some planning ahead and just knowing the parameters of your capacity.
Right. So what we're saying is ultimately know your limits, right? Know your limits and then plan to excel them. So it's not know your limits in terms of knowing where you have to stop, but know your limits in terms of figuring out how you're going to get beyond those points, to put the work in that you need to do in order for you to excel beyond whatever it was you thought you were capable of doing. In the same way as you signed up for this program, for this PhD, for this master's degree, for this bachelor's degree, which was beyond anything that you'd studied beforehand, and your intention was for you to excel to that point, the same thing is true with respect to the skills that you're going to need to make your way through that program. Whatever you thought you were capable of doing beforehand, figure out what that limit is, and then make a plan for how you're going to excel beyond that point. Because even the deeper darkest can be overcome if you put the work in, you know what I mean? So, all right, what we're saying ultimately, number one, we want to take a little ownership of your project. Number two, we want to maintain momentum no matter how small those steps are in so doing. And number three is we want to plan to excel, permitting a little margin of error and setting benchmarks for yourself. Are we good on these, Amy?
We are so good on these, Dr.
Good.
E.
All right. Okay. So on that bright note, get it? See, peering through the darkness on the bright note. All right, never mind. But on that bright note,
wow.
Thank you for being here on today's podcast. I appreciate you being here on today's episode and helping shed some light in the darkness. See? All right. Okay. I'm gonna stop doing that.
Oh my God.
All right.
Okay. Absolute pleasure. Thank you, Dr. E.
That wraps up today's episode and wraps up today's podcast. Thank you all for being here. Remember, if you're still finding yourself lost or unsure of how to progress or proceed through your project or your research, please feel free to grab a copy of our Work Smarter template. You can find a link to that in the description. It's also going to be available on the Grad Coach blog. Otherwise, register, sign up, get yourself a coach. I mean, what do you think it is we do all day long? You know what I mean? Sign up. And then once that's the case, if you got value from this video, please hit that like and that subscribe button. We will be right back here next week, and you definitely want to watch out for the episode we've got coming for you. Peace. Thank you, guys.